Our retired Captain Aliyu Umar joins us now. He's a security consultant. Thank you for coming on again today. Well, interestingly, looking at this matter, of course, just as the report says, one will hope that that request by the president will get accelerated hearing or urgent attention by the members of the National Assembly, because he thinks, look, we need to consolidate on what we have already, whatever it is they have, whatever success or how they view it. But from the look of things, do you expect anything contrary from a yes from the National Assembly?
Well, it will not be surprising if we get some contrarian views from the National Assembly. And the reason is quite straightforward. A state of emergency is not a card we play every day. It's actually the Commander-in-Chief's absolute reserve. So we will not trivialize it. Now, let's not also forget that the three states involved are actually in a very dire situation. There have been considerable improvements by the army, but then the army goes in with what I call counter-terrorist strategy. If we extend the state of emergency, we are actually extending the counter-terrorist strategy of normalizing things. Compared to what was there before they moved in, the troops, I think they've been able to stabilize the situation and are now managing it. So, if Mr. President decides to seek another 6 months or another extension, we should be looking at an extension towards standing down the troops. We should be looking at a graduation from counter-terrorism to anti-terrorism. So, consolidating on what we've already had shouldn't be misconstrued with beefing up the troops on ground to continue in a sustained manner the counter-terrorist strategy.
Will the National Assembly have the benefit of this hindsight or explanation?
I want to believe that there are people who are competent to do this kind of analysis to the members of the House. Okay? We must understand something. Beyond the state of emergency, what next? We must be building that capability now that the state of emergency is running. So if we are extending the state of emergency only to reach the next lease, at the end of the next lease of life of the state of emergency, would we have been properly positioned to take it on from there? Less military involvement. Can the military drop down, stand down to the background and have another agency do the managing? Because as I told you, from counter-terrorism, which is military, anti-terrorism is civil. Anti-terrorism is more sociological, it's more democratic. It's about the root causes of terrorism, addressing them. You know.
What do we do about the misconceptions on this matter? Because it wasn't long ago we had the director of press from Adamawa who thinks that it's somewhat political, that they don't see any reason why Adamawa State should be included in the state of emergency. So one wonders, how come they see politics and not military strategy?
Yes, relatively you can see that of the three states, Borno, Yobe and Adamawa has virtually faded out of the what I call ground zero of things. They've not actually had any adverse, attacks of late. And in the same, realm of standing down and downgrading counter-terrorism and ushering in anti-terrorism, we can actually start with Adamawa as a prototype. Anti-terrorism is just about creating awareness, lobbying our legislators to make legislations that will favor the prevention of those things that bring about violence and terrorism, looking at prosecuting terrorists promptly and quickly, looking at getting people to understand that terrorism does not actually pay anyone, not even the terrorist who carries the bomb. He's the first loser anyway.
So what about the fact that they share borders with Cameroon to some extent? And then you remember, where was that? Wasn't it close to Adamawa or off Cameroonian coast where the Boko Haram leader is believed to have been killed.
Yes.
Does that have any factor? Does it play any role?
Yes, it does play a role, but as I told you, let's begin to think and say beyond the state of emergency won't last forever. Beyond the state of emergency, what next? This state of emergency is just like a bracket in time where all stakeholders, including our border guardians, the customs, the immigrations, can actually hone in skills that can hold the status quo that is achieved by the military during this short period. States of emergencies are dynamic, short and very brisk. If we sustain the state of emergency beyond normal, you see there are two things involved: civil, military. So we are beginning to see a situation where civil and military, which are actually opposites, are actually now perpetuated. Now think familiarity breeds contempt. Okay, and the army itself is not designed for that particular role. The fact that we've brought them in is exigent. So we cannot bring them in then perpetuate it. Other challenges will start coming up. Okay.
So you actually think that there are factors in, you know, extending it that could actually make a state scream out that this is unfair?
Really, it is unfair if they decide to scream out. It's now left for the Mr. President's advisors to put the facts of the matter on the table and defend the extension. Defending the extension is not meant to say we want to perpetuate it. We should defend an extension that is actually going to be progressive. Progressive in the sense that, let's look at it this way. The state of emergency should have a life cycle. Okay? Yes, it should have a life cycle. Starts from somewhere, accelerates, peaks out, and then gradually it goes down again.
Can you tell us some of the factors? I mean, because we just hear a state of emergency, and then, you know, the only thing that comes to the mind of many people is more soldiers are sent to a state. But are there other factors, you know, that could make life really unbearable for the civilian population living in a state?
Factors in what realm are you talking about? Factors that could lead to the declaration of factors?
No, factors that could make life, you know, uncomfortable when a state of emergency is declared to a civilian population.
Oh yes. A state of emergency, as I told you, is dynamic. The army actually comes in with a strategy that is meant to repress or suppress terrorism. Okay? They are going in there, they will close up with terrorist cells and take them out.
Some of this could include shutting off of phone lines, I believe.
A lot of things will be done. It could even, let me give you an example, curfew, saying stay indoors. It takes away an element of your democratic rights. It is allowed for a short period because it's exigent, but it cannot be sustained.
When you're talking about short periods, what time frame are you looking at?
A 6-month time frame is just fine to actually put a state of emergency in place, stabilize the situation, and then begin to downgrade. A state of emergency cannot just be called off. Let's not make that mistake. You know, it's not like that momentarily. If a state of emergency is going to be lifted, it's going to be a process. Gradually, what the army has taken, it's going to give back in a secured state to other civil enforcement agency, and then gradually they pull out. There's going to be like an overlap. At the end of that overlap, when we have had what you call a change of guards per se, then the commander-in-chief now lifts the state of emergency. So there's not going to be a vacuum.
And this, you say, can happen within 6 months?
Yes, if today the CNC decides to extend the state of emergency, say for another 3 months, I want to believe it's going to be progressive. And at the end of the 3 months, we should have been seeing a disengagement. And probably from this second lease of the state of emergency, we should begin to see the beginning of the disengagement.